This is Guy McPherson here again with Peter Miller. We've been talking with each other once a month now, and it looks like we've worn out the audience. So this is going to be our last, or maybe our next to last conversation for quite a while. So pay careful attention, students. This is the real deal. This is the final one. So, Peter, you want to start us off with some questions and answers and whatever?
For sure. Well, I just want to say first, I've really appreciated having these opportunities on and off since about 2018 to ask you questions and to have interactions. It's been really stimulating for me and really educational in terms of understanding a lot more about not only the environment, but how things really connect between environment and culture and political matters and sort of just um, seeing things as they are on a whole kind of new level. So I've really appreciated you and your generosity. So thank you so much for interacting with me. Um, and being patient with my many questions. And when I went to school, my teachers always said, "Peter, there's no stupid questions," and well, I've kind of embraced that, and I make a point of trying to ask even questions that could be seen as maybe not necessary, but I like to try and fill in the gaps as much as possible, and you've been willing to do that with me, even on a repetitious basis. So
Well, it's
thank you for
interesting
that.
you bring that up, that most professors, most teachers say there's no such thing as a stupid question. First day of class, I would tell my students, you know how your other professors tell you there's no such thing as a stupid question? Yeah, that's wrong. There are questions that you already know the answer to, and you're asking why. Are you virtue signaling? You already know the answer to that question. So
Mm,
you don't need to
mhm,
ask that
mhm.
question. That is a stupid question.
So that'd be a little bit of nuance on that
Right.
particular issue. Yeah, people have different motivations for why they ask, right? And I think for me, I think I would say I'm really like a genuine student. When I'm in class or I'm with someone who's knowledgeable about something, I'm genuinely curious. And if it appears like the question isn't needed, it's probably just something I've forgotten or something like that, or had a hard time wrapping my mind around in the first place. Um, but yeah. So, I mean, in the early stages when I was first kind of interviewing you and asking you questions, I was really trying to kind of clarify, like, I mean, could this really be happening? And trying to really get the main points that you have put together over the years, from the greenhouse effect to the aerosol masking effect, to how there's the damned if you do, damned if you don't
Mhm.
predicament that we're faced with, and trying to wrap my mind around that. Uh, so that was kind of the first part for me, and then really having it was difficult to believe that it could be that bad. I think people, because we really are infused with that sense of like hopefulness in this culture. I mean, that being, I guess, whatever modern westernized industrial culture, like where we are, where most of us are kind of fixated on the media and the messages we get from main outlets like Disney, for example, right? And I think ever since childhood, like I mean, I've been watching Disney on and off, and it infuses in you that sense of you can accomplish anything you put your mind to. Hope is the ultimate attribute, and kind of like if you don't have that, if you're not using that as a principle, then it's almost like you're not even human, if that makes sense. And to discard that is almost like it seems abnormal. It seems crazy to to discard that even for a moment. Um,
Right.
and
I grew up I grew up believing there's nothing better than hope. Hope is the ultimate emotion that
Mhm.
that we should all subscribe to, right? And then I actually looked up the definition. You don't want to do that. To want something to happen or be true. Wait, what? That's all there is to it. To want something, I want a lot of things to happen. I want a lot of things to be true. That doesn't make it so.
Right, right. Yeah, just because, we want something doesn't make it so. Um, but I mean, coupled with that, I think a lot of us are, we've been programmed to be achievers, many of us, right? Like if you come into this world, you need to produce something, you need to achieve something, and you use hope as a way to do that, right? And then when you achieve something, you become something, then you become worth something of value, monetary value, right? And then when you have monetary value, then you can enjoy life, you can be influential, you can have more things, you'll have a higher quality of life, right? The whole thing is to try and enjoy, right? Enjoy life, try and whatever life has to offer, and but not just do that, but do it through those means: hope, achievement, money. Get there, right? That's the whole idea.
It's all about the money.
I mean, I mean, that if I was to break my conditioning down, like my programming conditioning, I think those would be some of the rudiments: hope, achievement, wealth, acquisition, and to then happily ever after. Right? I mean, that's
I,
Disney in a nutshell, isn't it? That's Disney in a nutshell.
yes. I don't know how many times I heard from my parents when I was a kid, you can do anything. You can do anything. Really? Really? So I thought I could be a professional football player. You know what? I can't. I couldn't and I can't because I'm not born with those skills. And there's no way for me to work hard enough to overcome my inability to run fast or to throw the ball a long way or a thousand other things, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But but at least in this country, you're told you can do anything. You're told that so many times that most people come to believe it. How could that even be?
Right. That's exactly how propaganda works, right? I mean, it's what Hitler did. You just keep repeating and repeating. And you repeat the message again and again. Eventually, it becomes belief for people. That's what any probably successful leader has done in many cases, right? Just keep repeating.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, we see it with
uh,
presidents and presidential candidates all the time.
right, right. But I think like a lot of us are indoctrinated in this way. Like I think I'm like a lot of people been indoctrinated, programmed, conditioned in this way. So then, but I'm also a very curious person, right? And I've also kind of sensed, kind of like in the Matrix, like I've always sensed something's not right. Like there's just something, like something isn't right. And then I encounter your work. Can't even remember how I first stumbled upon it, but I got your book, Going Dark, and I'm like, it's like the something isn't right question it's being answered in my view is being answered, right? You're saying that what isn't right is what's going on here. The thing that our programming never informed us of. So then we start interacting, right? And I'm a very curious uh, learner, but it's difficult to sustain that curiosity, and it was for me. And I mean, so I wanted to kind of ask you today, like, okay, like people come to you, they could be like me, they could be a bit different. They learn, and then they go away or they get angry. Things happen, right, when they encounter this message. And I think there's something to do with this programming I'm talking about. It comes into contact with the reality that you're talking about, and it's really, really hard to accept it. Can you speak to that?
Yes. My brother used to tell people, I can't remember whether it was the first day or the last day of his college classes. Remember, you're unique, just like everybody else, because we
Mm-hmm.
all are.
Mm-hmm.
We're all unique, and yet we have these attributes that are the same or nearly the same for all of us. I think most of us, maybe all of us, are curious at some level. When we hear something new that doesn't match up with the dominant message we've heard our entire lives growing up in this set of living arrangements, we hear something new. Anybody who's paying attention sort of does the whole cocking the head thing. Like, what? What? How can that be?
Mm-hmm.
That's not like anything I've heard before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So And that's where I come in, telling people something they haven't heard before, right? Because this is
Mhm.
unusual, because everybody else says we just have to quote Bill Clinton, work hard and play by the rules. It's all going to work out fine. We just have to reduce emissions and it'll all be all right. We just need to do these three things because basically in this country, everything is a seven-step plan, right? And so somebody has always got three or five or seven steps that'll lead directly to nirvana, whether it makes any sense or not.
It's just repackaging hope, right? Keep repackaging it.
Absolutely. Uh, hmm.
And so, like you said, like you've had thousands of angry emails, right? Like there's people, they don't want to hear what you have to say. Um, it leads to uncomfortable feeling. We've talked about this before. People don't like things that don't feel good, that feel they could feel like doomy or feel kind of hopeless, feel feel impossible, maybe and then they send you angry messages, right? You've had
Oh
lots of
yeah.
these.
Oh, thousands. Thousands. In fact, for a long time, probably for 15 years, I get more than 200 email messages every day. And that's a lot, by the way. And now that I've been largely disappeared from public life, I only get maybe 100 a day. It's quite a change. I like it.
50% down.
It's it's one of the advantages of having been disappeared from public life is that I
Mm-hmm.
don't get nearly as many stupid email messages. I mean, email messages.
They follow certain trends or themes though, right? I mean, there's like anger packaged a certain way, right? Like,
Right. There's the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's five stages of grief and dying, right? They're all there in the email messages. Early on, everybody is in denial. This can't possibly be happening. We are the best species ever to occupy the planet. We're so brilliant. We could never go extinct. In fact, I'm not even ever going to die, right? And then you work through those stages and you work at it hard enough, and most people don't. You get to acceptance. You go through depression, you go through the inability to accept reality. And it's basically what this amounts to, right?
mm-hmm,
Here's a
mm-hmm,
line from Carl Sagan, the professor and science educator. By far, most of the species of life that have ever existed are now extinct. Extinction is the rule, survival is the exception. Of course, most of the species it's more than 99% of the species that have ever existed are now extinct. And we think we're so special that we can't go extinct? Come
mm-hmm,
on.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
and like the at least 8 species in the genus Homo before ours, at least 8 went extinct that were
Right,
in the same
right,
genus. For all practical purposes, they were us.
right. So yeah, then the question is, if all these other similar types of species go extinct, then why not us? Is a question, right? And then also there have been 9 extinction events in the past. So even if industrialized civilization wasn't hyper speeding it up, it would still happen. Like we would still go extinct, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. People talk about the superpowers, like there used to be two. There used to be the Soviet Union and the United States, and those were the superpowers. And then pretty much the Soviet Union collapsed, and Russia isn't quite of the same caliber. But for a long time there, I only referred to those superpowers as hyperpowers. In the United States, it's a hyperpower. Everybody's just it's like everybody's on cocaine all the time. They're all hyped up, right? It's
mhm.
insane. The
Yeah.
United States is
So
a
yeah.
hyperpower.
But as Carl Sagan said, like extinction is the rule. So that means basically that, like again, even if you weren't presenting this message about the abrupt, irreversible climate change, like that it's just being sped up. That's a big part of your message, right? I mean, it happens all the time, but we're speeding this one up.
Yes.
Um, It
Yes.
would, but humans would still go extinct. So it's not like we are this eternal species. Like we have a time and a place, and then it's over.
Right. And I mean, even the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which was designed to fail when it was created during the Ronald Reagan administration, even they, and this is from their October 8th, 2018 report, global warming of 1.5 degrees. Quote, these global level rates of human-driven change far exceed the rates of change driven by geophysical or biosphere forces that have altered the Earth system trajectory in the past. Even abrupt geophysical events do not approach current rates of human-driven change, end quote.
Mhm.
So we have managed to speed up the thing through our consumption of fossil fuels so much that nothing in planetary history comes close to what we're doing. Not even close. And
Mhm.
you're trying to tell me we're not number one? This is amazing to think that,
Yeah.
for example, the asteroid that struck the Yucatan Peninsula and drove the dinosaurs and many other species to extinction, that was a mass extinction event. That played out over more than 70,000 years. More than 70,000 years, dinosaurs were still hanging around. The closest relative we have these days is chickens, by the
Right,
way.
right.
So
Oh, really?
next time you're eating a chicken egg, just be thankful the asteroid didn't hit the last chicken.
I thought it was pigs for some reason. I thought we were the closest with pigs.
Oh, no, no,
No?
no. That's the closest relative to dinosaurs that now
Oh,
survives.
sorry. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I said
To
that the wrong
dinosaurs.
way. Yeah.
Or I didn't hear it right. But genetically, I guess we're pretty close with pigs. That's why they can
Yes.
make like organs with on them or something,
Right.
right?
Yes. Yes. Some people get hearts from pigs.
Yeah, and stomachs too, I've heard. Yeah, stomachs as
Yeah,
well.
that's great. I'm pretty sure Dick Cheney had the heart of a pig when he started. Then he got somebody else's heart. He still lives today.
But it's fair enough to say that, I mean, your message, while rooted in science, ecology, uh, and other parts of science, right? I mean, you're not just strictly ecology, right? It really is at in essence, it's anti this system, right? It's anti-industrial civilization. Um,
And it used to be a lot more so than it is now. Once I discovered the strong link between maintaining industrial civilization, maintaining this set of living arrangements, and collapse extinction of all life on Earth, then I came to realize that we might dislike industrial civilization, but we better not be cheering for its demise.
right. Yeah, you're a reluctant supporter because of the aerosol masking effect, right? Like,
Right.
uh,
Yes. And also it's not just the aerosol masking effect, it's also the meltdown of nuclear power
oh,
plants, strip away
right.
stratospheric ozone. And also it's everything. It's the rate of environmental change. If we slow this system down, which I always thought would be a good idea, right? Because we're the hyperpower. We must go faster. That's what we all think is that we just need to go faster and then we'll be better for it somehow. But even slowing it down could lead to our own demise, which would be inconvenient.
And that's the damned if you do, damned if you don't idea.
Right,
I think
exactly.
that was the one that I really struggled with. I was like, how could it be like that? Like, a predicament. There's like where you have to do the unhealthy thing. Right? Like you have to do it, or the whole thing collapses. You have to keep being unhealthy on an environmental basis, right? Like,
And this is why I've been saying for a very long time that we really need to decommission all the nuclear power plants because that is the single factor that will cause the extinction of all life on Earth if we don't deal with it. And as near as I can tell, nobody is interested in dealing with it in a positive manner.
yeah. So even if we go extinct, some species would be able to remain as if we were to decommission those somehow.
Yes.
Um, but if we don't, then it would probably wipe out every last microbe, right? Like,
Right, absolutely, because of the ionizing radiation stripping away stratospheric ozone and superheating the planet. And interestingly, this was displayed in the 2021 film Finch. And so filmmakers get it. Filmmakers have gotten it for at least the last 3 years.
I think artists often do. I think there's a lot of truth in music and theater, but it doesn't hold any water politically, right?
Right, that's exactly right. Yes, if instead of having politicians responsible for maintaining the set of living arrangements, if we had artists instead, it would be a very different world.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, a truth about human relationships, truth about environmental matters. A lot of it is portrayed in the good art, the good, good music. What I would call good and good theater. It really has a way of shining in there, and you can just feel it, right? You can feel, you can really vibe with it. It's pretty amazing. Um, so yeah, it's been it's been it's been a rough road in a lot of ways for you over the years, um, learning about these ideas and then learning more about them. So you, like you said initially, you were more wanting to just change it all, shut it down, and then you realize, well, then we can't. Otherwise, these other consequences come.
Right.
Um, and So do you think that's been the hardest thing for people to like me? Has it been the hardest thing for most people to internalize is that predicament that we have to keep doing this, even if it's not good for us, and regardless, it will eventually break itself completely. Like there's
Yes.
nothing you can't get out of it. You're locked into it mentally and physically. Like you have to do you you have to keep doing this. It's like a person like saying it's like saying you have to keep using the cocaine or you have to keep using the heroin or your body will keep shutting down or well it'll shut down immediately but it will certainly shut down soon regardless, right?
Right. Right. And yeah, I think that's the whole story, really. I mean, no, none of us want this to happen, right? We don't even want to die as individuals. We don't want everybody in our family to die. We don't want all our friends to die. We don't want our species to go extinct. And so the immediate reaction is that can't possibly happen. It can't. It just can't. I will not allow that to happen.
Yeah,
And
no,
and
yeah,
it's
no,
difficult.
people
And
have their hearts are invested in their families and in the future, right? And I guess when the heart gets invested you can't maintain all of your rationality.
absolutely. No, once your emotions take over the show,
Hmm.
rational thinking
Hmm.
has nothing to do with it.
Hmm.
That's
So in
pretty
a lot of
common.
ways, you've been breaking hearts, right? Over the years.
I'm
You've
a
been breaking
heartbreaker, man.
hearts. You're a heartbreaker. I think there's a song by this heartbreaker. I'm pretty sure my heart was broken somewhere along the line while we were talking. I just couldn't stand it. My heart
Yeah,
got broken to a point, and you know, but then my rational mind still sitting there somewhere. But it's hard to deal with heartbreak and grief. Like this is a grief and loss issue, as you've mentioned, right? People go through those stages if they're thinking about it in any depth, right?
right.
You go through those stages, and they're not fun. It's not fun, enjoyable to go through grief
No,
at
no,
all.
not at all. Yeah, Edward Abbey had a great line. Life is too short for grief or regret or bullshit. Three sentences there. And and yes, life is too short for grief, but how do you get around it? I mean, if you're a human, you actually experience grief. How
Mhm.
I don't know any other way around it. I know that
Yeah.
having completed a 3-day course with the Grief Recovery Institute, I know now that I can recover from grief with a little effort. And so, for anybody who's interested in that, I would strongly recommend the 20-year anniversary edition of the Grief Recovery Handbook. It's a relatively short book, some exercises that you can go through in a matter of a few hours and help you deal with and potentially recover from your own grief. And it's tough.
For sure. No, that's another mental health subject that's would be good for people to invest in, but probably unlikely mostly, right?
Well,
Probably unlikely.
it's one of those things we don't even like to admit. Right? I'm too
Mhm.
strong for grief.
Oh, right, right, yeah. Yeah, and I mentioned to you that I'm studying trauma right now, and one of the one of the foundational ideas that they're saying is, we're fragile. Humans are fragile. And so they're easily traumatized, actually. And that trauma carries with it consequences if it remains unresolved. And most of the time, I think for most people, they have trauma sitting in them, and it's influencing the way that they live. And it's probably even part of the early conditioning that about investing so deeply into this system that they can't shake, right? Like I've talked to many people in my practice, they become like achievement-aholics, workaholics. And they disregard their mental health just entirely, right? Like, and because it's never been made conscious to them that it's important, and so therefore it's never been a priority. And they've been had the mindset like if I just keep achieving, I just keep making money, I just keep buying things, I just keep getting ahead in life, it's going to solve all my problems. But then they find out that their relationships are crumbling, and they keep having angry outbursts, and so they can't actually sustain. They can't in the paradigm that they're in. But they've been using it as a way to kind of cover up their trauma over their lifetime, right? A way to get like short-term relief from the effects of
Right.
trauma.
Right. In this
Um,
culture, we don't even admit that we actually grieve. We
mhm.
don't admit it. We think it's such a bad thing that I can't grieve. I don't have time for that.
Right, I got to keep achieving. Right,
Right.
I have to
Exactly.
keep achieving because that's actually the solution, the real solution to all my problems, from what I've been, how I've been programmed. Right.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly.
but I mean, when you compare like the what I'm saying and from all the things I've discovered in mental health to like what you're talking about with the earth, like there's so many parallels, and I've that's been a huge part of my curiosity is like um, how we're pushing the earth to the point of breakage, but people do that to themselves. They push themselves to the point of breakage, um, and because of the way that they have, the way they think. And yeah, the way that they think things work, which is misinformed. It's really misinformed. You've been trying to inform, like this doesn't work. Right?
Right.
Just like a therapist would say, you can only do this for so long, and then your body is going to give up. There's a book by Gabor Mate called "When the Body Says No." Eventually, the body says no. Like I'm not going to function like I in an optimal way anymore. You're going to have mood swings. You're going to have angry outbursts. You're going to be depressed. You're going to have panic attacks because you've pushed it too far. You've pushed
Right.
it, right?
Right. And that's what we do. We push and we push and we push. Right. And those who succeed are the ones who push the longest and the hardest to get to whatever that rotten apple is at the end of the journey.
Well, yeah, you can have maybe you achieve some wealth, but then the consequences and the costs are disregarded or denied. And that's part of your message too, is like saying there's going to be consequences. There's consequences, right, to this way of living and pushing the earth to the brink. Like there's going to be consequences. The timing that we've talked about might be a bit off, but they're still coming. Like it's still right.
Right. And it's still too soon. You know, even if it's 2050, which it's not, by the way, isn't that still too soon? I mean,
Mm.
in theory, I would still be alive then. In theory, if I had children, they would all be in the prime of their lives
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
2050, right?
Right.
So, I mean, this is very difficult information to deal with and to
Yeah.
process and to admit that there is something here that might actually be true.
Right. So I mean, just like how a person might see a therapist and be like, "I'm done seeing him. He's opened up my eyes too much. I don't like what he's saying. Like I'm done. Like stop coming to therapy." Right? Like, it would be like you know, in a lot of ways, kind of what's happened to you. Like people end relationships with you, they kind of demonize you, because they don't want to hear about the consequences to this way of life. Like they really don't, or they don't want to embrace it. Like the reality of the consequences.
Of
Would you say
course,
that's true?
this is all we've ever known, right? We grew up within a certain set of living arrangements that we're still in. This is all we've ever known. We haven't, I don't know anybody who grew up making their own bows and arrows and then going out and shooting deer so that they would have food for dinner, right? I don't know
No.
anybody who's done that. Everybody I know goes to the grocery store to buy their food and then cooks it with fossil fuels
Yep.
and on, right? And we don't know any better. We don't know any different. It's
And
a,
there's no way we could start hunting because most of the land is owned, right, by
yes,
people. I mean, I suppose there is some crown land, but I mean, even when people make attempts to live another way, they probably would really have a hard time because it would be such a huge adjustment, right? Um, we're so used to the having these conveniences. Like we're probably extremely weak compared to our predecessors. Like they would have been so much stronger, like physically, right? Or so much more resilient.
right, absolutely. And so much shorter lived. So if they were in pain, they knew it wasn't going to last.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. They did, yeah, live shorter lives and it was harder. And um, but at least they weren't propelling the an extinction event.
Right, exactly. And that's one
Mm,
thing I try to point out to people very frequently is neither are you. You know, you and I and the people, the individuals we know, we are not driving that extinction event that's currently going on. I mean, the collective mass of us is, yes, but is that you and you taking your car to drive to work 5 days a week?
right.
Is
Yeah.
it you because you use fossil fuels to cook your dinner for your family? No,
Right. Right.
right? And so people have this great feeling of guilt, like everything bad is happening is and it's my fault.
Right. No, yeah, it's really important to put that in perspective and for the mental health aspect of it, right? Because yeah, and you don't want to be weighed down by, centuries of decision making that weren't yours.
Mhm.
And also now being locked into a way of life. Like, I mean, everyone's locked into it, whether we like it or not.
Right.
Mm,
Yeah.
uh,
Try
uh,
try escaping industrial civilization.
right.
You
Yeah.
know, I actually tried. I lived off grid for more than a decade, and then when you discover the aerosol masking effect and you discover the impact of nuclear power plants melting down, and you've been championing living off grid all this time, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so you reach that point of you're probably in deep acceptance of where things are at with all the study and contemplating and talking about the subject, right? You're fully accepted. Would you say that's true, or do you ever have a hard time like
No,
accepting it for?
no. I'm completely in acceptance. There's no doubt about it. In fact, I added two stages to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's five stages of grief.
Mm,
Stage six is gallows humor or dark humor, the ability to see the joke in everything. And
mm,
admittedly, that's a lot easier for me than it is for a lot of people because I don't have children and I never had children. And so it's easier for me to accept the extinction of our species than it is for a lot of people. I get that.
mm, mm,
And then stage seven is to slightly modify a word that we can't use because of YouTube's unbelievably low standards. Fork it,
gotcha.
fork it, and that doesn't mean I just give up on everything. It means there are certain things that I'm not going to do anymore because it doesn't make any sense. I am not going to do things just because this culture thinks that's what's best for me. This is a good idea, so I got to do it. No, no, there's
Mm,
a lot of
mm,
things I don't do anymore that I used to do all the time. For example, I shaved today. First time in 3 days. I used to shave
Right,
at least 7 days a week. And if I was going someplace where I had to, put on the show, I'd shave again that night. And so I was
right,
shaving 8 or 9 times a week. And now it's like
right,
once every 3 days. This is fine.
right. Yeah, sort of being fixated on image and right. I have to always have the right image so that people will accept me and think that I'm credible. You always have to be projecting this image, right?
Right,
That's what society would say.
right.
Um,
And and at some point that's true, right? So when I do these things, when I do recorded conversations, I put on a nice shirt, right? Right.
mm,
And and you can't tell that I'm wearing shorts. Right? I was
mhm.
blown away the first time I was in a news recording studio. And this is when I was playing basketball at Idaho State University, and the coach had a weekly show. And so he ran out of good basketball players to have on his show. So he had me on the show. And we were right after the nightly news. And the nightly news, the the people are wearing tennis shoes and shorts, and they're sitting at their desk, and you don't see that. And
Right.
by the way, they're always trying to make the other person laugh, right? So
Um,
the weather person is trying to make the broadcast people trying to make them laugh. Seems
try and break out a character.
right, exactly. That was amazing. I didn't know any of that.
Well, it sounds like they have fun doing those
Yes,
jobs.
yes, they were having fun. What a good idea.
Yeah, definitely something good to include in one's lifestyle for sure. And to, yeah, not forget that that's still possible, right? It's still possible to
Yeah,
experience joy and fun despite the things that are you've been saying over the years. It's still impossible to enjoy life.
right up until your last breath.
Yeah, the sad aspects of the industrial civilization story, they don't have to completely erase um, the good experiences that we can have. So that's important to reinforce as well, along the same lines of not um, viewing yourself as accountable for all of human decision making and in the
Right.
ways we've invented this thing. Yeah.
I think it was Gandhi who blessed the person who killed him
Mm.
because he knew even when he was dying that that person has more troubles than I do. And so if
Mhm.
I can tell a joke with my last breath, that'd be about as good as it gets.
Yeah, for sure. That's pretty amazing. Very graceful. So, I mean, the last part here, I was going to just inquire just a little bit about. You were mentioning in one of your recent presentations how lots of the research that you've brought forward over the years, and even the recent research, it isn't totally in alignment with some of the realities of what we're seeing in the Arctic. So that we're not having an ice-free summer, for example, or not a no solid ice sheet in the summer. So, like, what would be a good way to think about how it's not totally aligning and how things apparently should have been worse by now?
With gratitude. That's my
Mm,
approach anyway. I mean, James
mhm,
Anderson, the Harvard atmospheric scientist famous for leading the research team that discovered the Antarctic ozone hole as a result of emission of chlorofluorocarbons. He said, quoted in Forbes magazine on January 15th, 2018, quote, the chance there will be permanent ice in the Arctic after 2022 is essentially zero, end quote. Well, here we are, it's 2024, and we haven't had an ice-free Arctic Ocean yet, and we're not going to have one this year, as indicated by the U.S. Navy postgraduate school's 6-month ensemble forecast. So, and then uh, almost 3 years later, Jennifer McKinnon concluded that we would have an ice-free Arctic Ocean in 2022. Jennifer McKinnon is a professor at the University of California, San Diego. and she also works with the Scripps Institute. And so they were both wrong, and I was quoting them because these are renowned scholars who have no reason to lie about something as important as this. And obviously, in the wake of the first ice-free Arctic Ocean in at least 70,000 years, in the wake of that, the rate of environmental change would be so great that it would cause our extinction, and probably the extinction of all species on the planet. So that's inconvenient. And so I was wrong when I quoted these people, and they were wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine with me because I want them to be wrong, right? I don't want our species to go extinct, and certainly not that quickly.
When we say the word wrong, or when you say it, it doesn't mean, because I mean, I know people will, they'll say, oh, he's saying their science is wrong. Does it mean that the whole thing is discredited?
No, absolutely not. And I should have recognized I was stepping into that particular pile of stuff.
Well, people would love to hear that, right? Oh, he's admitting it. It's been wrong all along. It's right. Like,
Right.
so
Absolutely.
is it totally discredited?
Well, they were off by a couple or 3 years on their dates, on their timing, but that does not mean that we're not going to have an ice-free Arctic Ocean at some point in the relatively near future. They were wrong about when it would happen, but were they wrong by 5 years? Were they wrong by 10 years? Were they wrong by 50 years? The further out we go, the less likely it seems that they would be wrong by that much. So if they were wrong by a few years, then we still could have an ice-free Arctic Ocean, not this year, but next year, or maybe the year after that, which would drive events that would cause our extinction and probably, again, all the extinction of all life on Earth. And so it's not something that I wish for by any stretch of the imagination. I was quoting these people, I turned out to be wrong. It's one of those cases where I really want to be wrong.
Yeah. The like the actions of industrial civilization, like the billions of decisions people make and how they, right, and how we collectively pursue uh, all of our hopes and dreams, right? The way we do that, those urges, those forces, those are not changing, right? Everything that's led to this point is not changing. The way that we conduct ourselves. I mean, there might be a few interventions here and there, maybe some things like, I mean, now that they have paper straws and there's wooden forks. I mean, and you said that there's something with there's a filter on the exhaust system now. What's that called again?
Catalytic
The
converter.
the catalytic converter. So I mean, there's these little things that are put in place to like maybe just like as pretense to look like we're doing something, but maybe they just do very little. But like on the whole, the forces that have led us to this place, they haven't changed much, have they?
No, absolutely not. We are still humans. We are still humans within the set of living arrangements that has as its motto, must go faster, must have more, right? That's still, I hear that or see that almost every day. People shopping, people buying, people seeking their own sense of well-being based on the material possessions they own. What? In what world does that make any sense? Right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and so many cultures previously and currently do not operate that way. I mean, think of indigenous peoples and their disdain for material possessions.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
just not who they were. It's not who they are to be known, to be honored because you have stuff.
Or talents, right? To be really focused on, to have the spotlight on you. Like Western industrialized culture, this it focuses so heavily on the spotlight. You want to be the person in the spotlight. You want to be the rock star, right? I mean, I wanted that shit. I wanted that for years. Like I wanted to be the rock star, the person had the big light shining on him, everyone giving it accolades. I mean, but people do this in other ways too. I mean, it could be the famous teacher, lecturer, professor, right? Like author. It could be, it expresses itself in lots of ways, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And again, we can easily blame the culture around us, this set of living arrangements, for pushing people in that direction, because it seems that's what everybody wants, whoever everybody is. And
Mhm.
so at some level, it's to be expected almost that we should all be acting the same way, because somebody who acts differently, who steps out of line, is not treated well, to say the least.
You understand
Right?
that. You understand that. Yeah.
And
You've
and that
experienced
applies,
it firsthand.
yeah, and that applies to, I mean, we've all seen it dozens of times, right? Somebody acting differently than everybody else. Oh, he's weird. Well,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
he doesn't know what's going on in the world, or she wouldn't be acting that way, right?
Yeah. Well, I remember when Jim Carrey he was, I think, pretty hugely discredited when he was really trying to, he was doing like getting into meditation, and he was talking about how things aren't real. And I mean, I think he was seeing things as they are actually. But the way he was presenting himself, people were thinking he was just nuts, like he'd gone nuts or something, right?
Right, right.
Um,
Well, that's what happens when you're first in line.
But I mean, I was like, when I saw him, I was like, no, I think he gets it now. Like he understands that, material possessions and money is it's total pseudo happiness. It's just all fake. And that individual from Friends, before he died, he was Matthew Perry, is that his name?
Yeah.
He was saying similar things, like this is just not the way to happiness. You've been lied to. You've been just lied to, right? Like it just led to a whole host of destructive things in my life. But I mean, those messages don't go in. They don't get embraced when people tell the truth like that, right? They either get ignored or they get mocked. I think, like Jim Carrey, I
Yeah.
think he was mocked for a while. Matthew Perry was probably ignored. I mean, he's not. They're not rehashing those words of truth that he
No,
said.
no,
Uh,
absolutely not.
um,
Jim Carrey,
so yeah.
Jim Carrey insisted that homeless people be allowed to work on all the movies he made.
Oh, that was there was a yeah that was another actor did that too. Yeah,
Right,
one who was Robin Williams. Robin Williams did that too.
right.
Yeah.
And so these are people who actually understand that it's not all about me all the time, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's tough when you're in this culture and all you ever hear is me, me, and a little bit of me.
Yeah. No, that's the right way to be. I think that's how we're initially conditioned, especially from whatever we hear being said around us, probably largely the media. Um, we get conditioned to sort of instinctually follow that path,
Hmm.
and then some of us along the way get curious and start waking up to different degrees and experiencing the consequences of that. But as far as the overall message of environmental change, I mean, and extinction, so we were kind of just concluding there that, I mean, the forces that have been driving it have not changed a whole lot, like since 1750, the start of the
Right,
Industrial Revolution,
right.
right? I mean, things are still they're still following the same general paradigm, even if there's been little things that have been made to make it seem like they're trying to help matters. Um, like there's still the rape of the ocean. There's still the overheating of the ocean. There's still depletion of ice, right? I mean, there's still clear cutting the Amazon forest in places. I mean, there's still the abuse. The
Yes.
abuse is not, it's just not changing. The overconsumption is not changing. It's, you can't just kind of say that those awful things aren't happening anymore. They're still happening,
A-
right?
And it's not just that they're happening, it's that we reward people, we honor people, we idolize people who do it best.
Hmm. Hmm.
The people who can destroy the planet fastest are the ones we love the most.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's insane.
And often the political leaders that can promise us the most access to making money through those means. People love those leaders.
Of
Oh, they're
course.
so great, and they call it freedom. We're free to destroy. Right.
Uh,
And I think they like to delude themselves sometimes, and I've heard this too. Like, oh, if only we could just be balanced. We can. If only we just abuse the earth just a little,
right. Right.
just enough for her, to recover. So we screw her over and let her recover, then we screw her over again, kind of like
Right.
that.
I'm sure you think the same way as a parent, right? If I just abuse them now and then, it'll all be good.
Yeah, give them a chance to recover, and then we can abuse them again and keep it going, kind of thing. Right.
Oh,
But yeah, so I mean that's where we're at, right? And so I mean the general trajectory remains, despite I guess where research could have been flawed. I guess, and we've said this before, right?
yes. And to be clear, I want to be wrong forever, right? Like most
Right,
people, I
right,
don't want to die. I recognize that I will die, but I don't want to die, and certainly not soon. And
right.
and certainly the same applies to our extinction, because in large part because of what happens after that, the extinction of all life on Earth. And that's a bummer. But and so I go back and forth between, yes, that's a bummer, and I have this much control over it, right?
Hmm.
It's not something that is in my hands.
Hmm. Hmm. No, the urge to keep breathing is pretty powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
Yes,
think
it is.
you said once very famously, try holding your breath while counting your money.
Right.
I love that. I love that quote. I love it.
That has been turned around so much. I come across some form of that almost every day. And now it's become, what is it? You can't hold your breath while counting your money or something like that.
Hmm.
Something
Hmm.
that's sort of paradoxical, but kind of on the same track. Whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
But anyway, yeah, yeah. Okay.
at least people are thinking.
Yeah. I mean, even if these, yeah, all the work that you've done and the types of interactions you've had with me and many others, yeah, even if it just spurs that curiosity, right? And at least gets people, thinking outside the box, even if just for a little while,
Mhm.
then, it's had some utility, right?
Yes. Getting people to think is something that I prided myself on for the many years I was on various college campuses.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and it's Henry Ford, not that I'm a big fan of what he did, but he has this great line. Thinking is the hardest thing there is, which is probably why so few people engage in it. Something like that. Yes, it's hard to think.
Hmm. Or Carl Jung, I think he said judging is easier than thinking. So that's why most people judge.
Right.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
we
Judging usually meaning a drastic oversimplification of thoughts about the world, others, yourself. So I mean, that's where, yeah. If people can do exercises like meditation that can help reduce judging, I mean, that goes a long way for quality of life. Just saying.
Yes, there are things we can do as individuals that will make the lives of the people around us, and by extension us, better.
Yeah, we can reduce our suffering, I think, at least by 50% if we learn to take care of ourselves in certain ways. At least 50% of our suffering is self-induced. And the good news is we can learn how to turn that off.
Right.
Like, so,
Yes. And it's difficult because when everybody thinks bad things about you, then for some reason, you value the opinions of other people more than you value the opinions and the facts of your own.
right. Yeah. No, that's something that people do. They really do internalize judgments, the judgments of others. And they almost say, oh, that judgment must be the truth, when it's in fact just, it's an oversimplification of things.
Right. There's a
Yep.
lot of that.
Yeah. A lot of that. Which why it's been nice to have some prolonged discussion because we can actually break things down, understand some of the nuance, and that's another huge benefit and why I really appreciate you engaging with me. So again, thanks for allowing me to do this, and I hope, hope that people have benefited somewhat from our hanging out here.
Well, that's the reason we're doing this. It's not for the big money, folks.
No, right.
Okay, so let's wrap right there, and maybe we'll do this again. And by all means, we'll have conversations, whether they're recorded or not.